let's go look at this again and say, okay, that's 6 out of 10. Oh, we've done 10. Look at that. We've done 10. We returned. We've only got a couple left. Okay. I start to get excited as I work through a plan and I get down to the end of the plan. So, save the new inputs in TX inputs. That looks like an easy one. That doesn't even seem like it's worth printing out. Let's move down to here and do this one. Okay, now that makes some kind of sense. We're trying to build a transaction. We've got the inputs for the transaction, so we stuck it in there. I wonder why it does it as a separate step. Probably something having to do with Go. No matter. We did that. Step 8. Create the new outputs for the to address. Create new TX outputs with funds. Call this TX out. And there's an append function that we use to stick things onto stuff. Okay, it must do some processing in the append function, but basically this is where we're starting to attach our outputs. Now you notice that this is the to address. We already checked up at the top that the to address has sufficient funds, and consequently this is where we're going to take that sufficient funds and tack it on. Okay, so let's see. We're going to create this new transaction with this. Create transaction with output. That's over in transactions again. Let's go find that guy. Okay. And basically it just returns the values in the data type, but I guess we're going to call it and build it. So it has two outputs. And what do we want to call this? TX out and an error. And we'll pop those there. The amount. We want the amount of the transaction. This would be the amount that we're sending to. So we want the address to be 2. This is not the change, and the amount is up as a pass parameter as amount. So that's really what you want to do there. A lot of times in Go, I end up doing this. And I just fill in so that it's used, and use the error. And I got to come back to this and fill in what that error is. But there's really two pieces to this piece that we're building, and the second one is to use this append to output. So let's code that, and then we'll fill in the error in a second with some sort of reasonable error. And we also have to remember that if we're going to do a return from that error at that point, we have to repair the index. So that's, I'll copy something from up above where I did that before. And TX out, there's this function, also in transactions. And apparently it does a couple things where it does the append and it does a length thing. Whatever it is, it does. So we want to do this append. And the parameters are the transaction type, which is a pointer, so it can update that. It's not a copy. And TX is our transaction. That's what we're returning that we built up above a few lines ago. And the new TX out that we just did, and we've got to put in these both come from the transactions package. So it knows what package they came from. And put in that transactions. And let's see, the last thing would be calculating the change. And if they had a total amount, then the total minus the amount would be the change. So let's say that change equals total minus amount. And we know that this is going to be a positive value. This would be a good place to put in an assert. Is greater than or equal to 0. If it's 0, we aren't going to do anything with it. So, the question is the change greater than 0? If change is greater than 0, and at this point, I'm just going to print something out for this. Now, we've got this error message back here that we got to come back to, and let's copy these lines up here. And we'll just put those in down here. We'll do that and print out the error. And again, error generating inputs, error generating new outputs, and we'll return the error. So that way we've repaired the index right here the same way. And we have then calculated these other things. Now, right here is where we're going to do some print statements. Let's do a print statement here. Let's see if we get output from that. And let's do right here, change, and we'll do whatever the change is. And we want to mark these as things that we got to come back and clean up later. We've still got some more work to do down here, but let's see if we can test it and run it at this point and see if we can get a result if we have built things right. No syntax errors. Recompile, and then make that guy. And let's see, we're doing 33 in this test case. So if we look at the change down here, that would be this amount right here. That looks like the right amount. And we got to that line, 110, and then we got to 114. And that change is actually returned. So, it tends to indicate that, yes, we've probably put together something. I mean, I haven't printed out enough to actually look at it, but I've now done enough that I can say, yeah, probably I'm on the right track. And we were at line 114. That was this one right down here. And what do we do when we want to have change is we're going to create a new TX output with the change, because this is what we're returning to the other person, to the from person. And it's to the from, and the amount is the change. So we want to do that. If we have to append, then we've got an error we've got to deal with in here. Append, and I think I used the same TX out, and both error and TX out are declared, so I don't need that colon. And then I append the change. And realistically, that's probably the last piece in this routine. Now, if I do a return here, I'm doing a return before it has gotten a result, so I haven't changed anything inside my indexes or in the file system. So we're going to try it once that way, but basically I think this is done, except for handling this error message. So let's go in here and put in the error handling. And I copy that from up above so I get a consistent error. TX output with funds. Error messages are not great because they're not unique to which thing happened. But basically, that's what we need to do for an error. And you know, I think what I want to do is print out that I got to the bottom. And there's going to be a cleanup pass. We've got to remove the exit. But let's compile this and run it once and see if it looks like it might work. I did take out the correct things for the declaration. That's good. And go and run it again. And it got down to the that's all, folks. At this point, you're ready to actually run a test of it at the entire level. So it's fairly obvious what's left is go and clean it up and actually start testing it and seeing if it actually works. But that gives you a walkthrough of how I would go about building something inside another program. Inside, this other thing where I've got a whole bunch of routines. I've got to go look for them. And a few of these routines, I glanced through what's in the code. But most of them, I went, okay, I've got this routine. These are the other things that I need to do. These are the pieces. There's a little bit of, how do you delete from this in Go? How do you put it all together? But that's the process that I will go through for building a new routine in most any program.